Well, it's 9 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and begin. I want to welcome those of you who have made the trip here to Salt Lake City, to downtown. Appreciate you taking your time to come today, and those who have joined online. We usually have 100 participants or more who participate online. We hope that that's a useful way for you to maximize your time. We are going to begin today with Aaron Brough out of Data and Statistics. He's got some responsibilities he's got to go to. So even before I do our introductions, I'm going to have you come over and we'll get right to business on some of the things that you're doing in your office. So,
good morning again, Aaron Brough from Data and Statistics. I do know most of you. Oh, she's giving me the clicker.
Buddy.
I have a funeral I have to go to, so. There we go. Okay, there's my name. All right, so the first thing I have to just let you know is the early warning system. The vendor has been selected. It's Panorama. I have I hear a yeah. We had a couple of you actually on the RFP review committee. What this is, it's a pilot program. It's scheduled for basically for 3 years, right now being the first year of this. This will be the development stage up to the end of this school year. Again, we're starting the call tomorrow with them, kind of the kickoff meeting. We are looking for 2 to 5 LEAs that are interested in participating in this pilot program. If you go back and read the legislation behind it, there's money allocated for it, but the LEAs are responsible to come back or come with half of that funding allocation. So you might ask, well, what is the allocation that we're expected to reach? At this moment, I don't know, because it depends on how many LEAs that we'll be participating with. Again, I've got to get in the conference call with the company themselves talking through this. But if you're interested, again, in working with this pilot program for the early warning system indicator, we're going to be working on the student achievement backpack information getting loaded directly from our warehouse into the system and then plugging into your SIS system and loading it on your side, and then having your teachers, principals, so on and so forth, then have direct access to it. Where it's going to live and all that stuff, I don't know yet, because we're just starting, but just realize that that is coming. Again, LEAs are required to cover half the cost of the pilots for these years. And the plan is roll out in the 2018-19 school year, which is not that far away. Question? Yeah, it will not be the way it's licensed. It's not per pupil. It's going to be like a lump sum cost, I believe. Again, I will be in meetings starting tomorrow as we're going to start hammering out all these details. But right now, I'm looking at the award and their proposals and such. It should not be a per pupil budget. So if you are a very large district or small district, I don't think it's going to be based upon a per pupil expenditure on it. Any other questions? Question online. Okay, early warning system, what's it supposed to warn us about? Good point. This is, its primary purpose is for the high school. It's the dropouts prevention components, where you're trying to find out those students in 9th grade, first quarter, first semester, whatever you use, who are at risk. It should be throwing up an indicator instantly, or putting students in groups saying they are at risk, or you should start paying attention to, this cohort or whatever group it is. And then it continues on as you go from 9th, 10th, 11th, if there's any indicators inside of there. There's other elements in there that we might be adding to it. There's some other risk indicators that they could plug in. They have as we looked at a really nice algorithm. We've looked at what Jordan, do you guys have one? Okay, I know Canyon School Districts is doing some stuff with this. I know Davis is, Salt Lake is, And that's all I'm remembering at the moment. Some of you else might be working on something like this, but again, the idea is how do we know if there is a student or a group and identify them very quickly within the first semester, so the counselors, teachers can go in and have some remediation, some work on those students. That's the point of the early warning system. It might have other purposes later on down the road where it go all the way down to elementary school. I know we've looked at different systems such as, on reading level by third grade, stuff like that. But at the moment, it's just we're targeting the high school dropout. Other questions? Hey. Item number 2, this is a request. There should be a link. I'm not going to click on this link. It's a very quick survey request I'd like you to go to. I believe you'll have access to this PowerPoint. It should take you all of 2, maybe 5 minutes. 10 if you're really opinionated, because there's some boxes in there. But basically, we're looking for feedback on the data gateway, its usability and such. So request that if you can go in there before the end of next week and take a look at it. I know that's a long period of time, but if you can go back home, take a look at it, or whenever, when you have a couple minutes, just go in there and again, it's just there's 3 questions, which are the agree, strongly agree, so on and so forth. And then I think there's 3 boxes down at the bottom, just comments that we'd like to receive from you. Okay. Data Gateway will be down today, just so you know the announcement. We sent this out to the Utrex users from 3:30 to 5:30 today. We were updating the database on the user accounts and that, so just a schedule outage. So just in case you're getting a call saying, hey, what's going on with my account? I can't get in Data Gateway today, that's what will be happening. Okay, last thing, student growth targets. I have a link here. I'm going to have Emily click on it. You have access, bottom one. Maybe she's going to click on the top one and come back and click on the bottom one. This is for you to view, to play around with, just take a look at, but this is using, yeah, it's not this one. Sorry. She's going to go back to it. We're talking about the students' growth targets, which are coming in the accountability system, the new accountability system. I've talked with this group a couple times about the student growth targets, of how to read these. They are kind of complex. We had an evaluation about a month and a half ago where we're looking again at the ESSA plan, and we're looking at teacher evaluation. We're not using this for a teacher evaluation. This didn't fall into there. But what we did is we took the language arts, the math, the science, collapsed them all, or we didn't collapse them, we aggregated it all together, looking at the students' growth targets, if they are met or not, and compared them against your MGPs. And then what we did was we dropped a Z-score calculation on this, saying, where are you landing on the differences between the MGPs, which are on this axis, versus met the student growth targets on that axis. Inside of here, you can say, I want to show districts, or I just want to see charter schools. You can select the Title I or not, and you can also go in here and select your LEA and just look at your scores inside of there. It will recalculate slightly behind those. Again, this is language arts, math, and science combined into one. If you look at this and it shocks you with anything, we should have a conversation. But basically what's happening is a student's growth target is an AGP calculation. When we say AGP, adequate growth percentile. If you look inside of the SURF database, oh, I actually got to go back now to the PowerPoint. Sorry, just back to the PowerPoint. And I might have advanced it. I don't know what I did. I push buttons. Okay, next slide, maybe. Okay, it's getting there. There we go. Okay, so if you want to look at this and redo some calculations, here's the code and the tables that you'll need to get into. Oh dear, that comes out weird. Okay, you'll look at the student's tests inside of SAGE. So again, sage.studenttests is the table. The calculations that we do first off is we have to identify which target are we looking at. I know this is SQL code, and I'm hoping most of you can handle it. If you can't handle it, go talk to your IT team. They can handle this stuff. You can just copy it, paste it in there. But basically, again, what we're doing is a median calculation on the information. We look at the students of their SGP, and then we also look at their prior year proficiency score. The calculation, and this comes with the SGP calculation package that we've been running now for 4 years or whatever, however long that's been. It's been there the whole time. We just haven't utilized it yet. It is getting utilized in the accountability system that's coming up. So we're giving you a heads up on this. But basically what happens is it goes in there and says, okay, according to your prior year proficiency rate, what will it take for you to be at the next proficiency level in 3 years? And so it's going to give you a number between 1 and 90, actually 1 and 99. So it looks like a percentile. And then you can take the SGP and compare it to the AGP and say, where are they? If they're above it, they're on target or they met their targets to meet growth. Yes, but let me see what that question is too. Okay, so AGP is adequate growth percentile, which is the code name. But when we talk about AGP, which is interchangeable with student growth target, adequate growth targets is the same thing. So the question is, repeat what I just said, right, Al? Okay, let me repeat this one more time. So we're looking at growth first, SGP on a student basis. So for example, Hal got 40 SGP, and he has a scale score, or a proficiency, sorry, not a scale score, proficiency score the prior year of a 2. We know you're a 4, but yeah, that doesn't matter. Okay, so he's not proficient. He has a growth of 40. What it does is it says, now, what type of growth is 40 enough for him to be proficient within 3 years? And does a calculation, and it's going to give him an AGP score. That AGP score then is going to say, let's say it's 41. So again, SGP 40, AGP 41. Yes, they do vary each year. Yes. You'll need to look at this stuff. Yes. Repeat the question, sorry. So the question, again, Hal, say it. You're getting lost where?
If you say 3 years out, it's not some growth percent. I don't know what it
No. It's a scaled score, proficiency score. And I understand, and the answer behind it is that's the way the package works currently. We don't convert it back to a scaled score. We've talked about that in the past. We just haven't done it. This is the first exposure that we're really giving to you guys to say, we need to start looking at this. If this becomes incredibly difficult to understand, then we need to, we don't have that yet. We can, it's been said we can. We've talked with the Center for Assessment and they said, yes, we can. We've never done it yet though. Okay, this has been a lot of behind the scenes, if you will, trying to get ready for this. The legislature, though, did say, hey, we're going to hit this target, we're going to hit this target, we're going to hit this target. Okay, here is the target. Yes, it is in it's in this percentile scoring right now. If we need to change this, we might be changing this. Giving this to you guys right now to start looking at it. Okay, and then it's complex. That's why I'm giving this code to actually pull it out and start looking at it. Okay, question? Okay, hang on, I'm going to give you the mic.
Yes, just for clarification, I thought what I wrote down was that you said, what will it take to be at the next proficiency level within 3 years? Then I thought maybe when you were talking about if we were using how, is it the next actual level or to proficiency? Like, is it to a?
It is the next level. So you get from a 2 to a 3, from a 3 to a 4, and from a 4 to stay a 4. Question, so it's a proficiency band gains? Yes, that's a good way of saying it. And again, it does it in the quantile regression when it's looking at the scale score levels, but
I mean, I like the concept. I like the concept of here's a set point that you need to work and it'll adjust. But as I implement the ideas in the conversation, I always think of if I sit down with my middle school or a high school math department chair and explain it, and I have 10 minutes, can I keep it in a simple, straightforward language that they get? Because that's where the rubber meets the road.
And the answer behind that is I'm doing quite a bit of work now to develop some training material, if you will, so when you go and look at it, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Or you'll look at that and you go, no, that's stupid. And I'm sure you guys will tell me that too. When I say stupid, difficult to understand. So again, I'm giving this to you now because we've got a couple months for you to kind of start digesting this. I've also given you just the first visualization. I'll be making other visualizations for you to go in and take a look at as we move along on this. But again, I'm just giving you here's the first code components. Here's the second code components where we do this simple calculation of did you make your targets? And that's all this code is doing right there is just saying, I'm looking at your SGP and is it greater than your AGP? Comment online. Question, do we need a current CERF file to get this information? Yes and no, because it's always been there. So every time you've pulled CERF from student tests, SAGE student tests, it's been there. So you can go back multiple years and take a look at this. If you want the latest data, obviously pull it from the current CERF file. Okay? Fun stuff. Again, look at the visualization. The visualization is real. I mean, we've hammered out hundreds of visualizations on this thing so far, trying to get this to a level where it's like, this is fairly easy to comprehend. We may not be there, and I totally am okay with that because that's why I'm bringing it to you guys now to start looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, this makes sense. No, this doesn't make sense. Again, if we go look at that visualization, we've done a couple things with it. One, we're taking METs, the target, and comparing it against the MGP now, which is the school-wide calculation, saying, are enough of your kids, you've got good growth, or you've got middle growth, or whatever it is that actually enough of these kids are making their targets? So it's doing that comparison, and then it's dropping into a Z-score comparison across the state, saying, now where your growth and making target, comparing that with everyone else. Right in the middle is basically, you know, it's the norm. Half standard deviations, that gray, and then half standard deviation past those then are your your different levels. So we're going to say normal, high, well above, and then you have the low and well below. Okay, is there a plan to change this in the accountability system? This is in the plan. This is the new growth combination plan, already written in the accountability system. This was presented last year, and again, it was written in there. And we'll be showing and doing demonstrations on how that calculation works too in growth. Yeah, but that's coming, and Michelle has it all perfectly flow charted in her head. It's a two-step process. Again, Anne Michelle understands it perfectly. She laughs, for those who can't hear it. Okay, any other questions? That's all I have. Whatever you like. So the acronym ST, Student Target, STG, where we're looking at it. So that's incorrect, sorry. Student SGT is one way, sorry. You guys have never made mistakes either. Okay, it's only me. SGT would be, SGT is Student Growth Targets, if we use that. Or you can say AGP. Again, we're working on, what are we been calling this thing? MET, Student Growth, adequate, we're working on it. Again, code-wise, you can go and take a look at it and get the results yourself. Dig through it. If you want to call me up and talk about it, happy to do that. Happy to. It hurts my head too. But just so you know, I'm letting assessment kind of lead the way on the acronym naming and what we're going to be calling these things. So we've got that group, and then we've also got the programmers who just go in there and are slapping out code. And sometimes the code jumps to what assessment calls it, and other times we're like, don't call it that. That's us being lazy. Let's call it something appropriate and understandable. We're just not there yet. The AGP is a different AGP, what I'm used to. What are you used to AGP-wise? Have you looked at this stuff inside of the tables? Okay, AGP is the acronym that we got from the SGP package. Yes, lots of acronyms, it's crazy. Yeah, again, targets. Yeah, we're looking at student growth targets, but it's a mouthful, and so someone's going to drop it into an acronym. But so if you start seeing spelled correctly, SGT, maybe that will make much more sense. But hey. Yes. So is the data gateway going to be out of service? Yes. Today. Just for a little bit, and then it'll be back up and running tomorrow. Just in case someone's trying to get in it tonight, and they're like, IT directors and Utrex users and such, so we're just letting you know too. I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, one more question.
Are those charts current? So, like you showed with the...
Okay, question. Are the charts currently available in the gateway to look at? No. These are on actually a test server. It's a Tableau server, just in case you're curious. You have to click on that link to get to it. Yeah, you should have the link. You can go and look at it. And then we'll start building more, making them available for you guys to start digesting, giving your feedback on what works, what doesn't work, and such. Hey, thank you.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Before you go, though, just my own check for understanding. You talked about the early warning system, not necessarily an action item, just to be aware of, and some LEAs may participate.
The action item, if you want, if you're interested, let me know.
Yeah, and that may or may not be an assessment decision in a given LEA, but just so you're aware of that and can be involved in those discussions. Is there a deadline on identifying when to participate?
Let me know by the end.
So by the end of January, if you're interested in joining with that pilot program, to let Aaron know. Then you talked about, and we put a link out for a survey, you would like all assessment directors to complete the brief survey to give you feedback about the data gateway by next week. And then finally, you shared the link that shows the information about the accountability, which is what our primary discussion has been about. And your expectation there is that they just look at it and give feedback if they have any about that moving forward. Okay. All right. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Okay. My quote for the day, fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. Wyatt Earp, famous Western gunfighter, said that once, and it's applicable in gunfighting. I started using that when I was involved in early literacy, and I got frustrated with this focus on speed in our children reading, and so I went back to always reminding that accuracy is more important than speed. In terms of assessment, obviously the data that we're trying to get, and we try to make decisions based on the data we get, it's essentially important. It's really important that that data is accurate, or we get way off the rails, and so that's how that's applicable to our world. I want to introduce you to Amy Magruder. She's the administrative secretary who's been recently hired. On January 4th, she started in the Assessment Accountability Office. You're going to become familiar with her. You'll see her sending emails out. Emily Sweeten has been filling in for Tori. I don't know Tori's last name, who used to be Tori Jensen, who left the State Board office back in May or April. And we've appreciated Emily's willingness and expertise in jumping in, and you'll start to interact with Amy Magruder a lot more regularly, though. You'll see her communicating about assessment director meetings, the AD memo, the webinar, and other information. So she's been here at the state office for the last year, and she's previously been in digital teaching and learning. So some of you in small districts might have interacted with her there if you had additional responsibilities with digital teaching and learning. So she is fulfilling some final responsibilities. She's also been over Midas. So any of you who have been involved in the Midas transition, that's been one of her primary responsibilities. And they'll have somebody new doing that. Okay, we'll spend just a minute. The December AD meeting was actually fairly brief, and so I only have a few Kahoot questions. If you'd like to join here in this room, if you'd open a browser and go to kahoot.it. If you're out in the field, you can do this from any location. So again, go to kahoot.it, and we'll pull this up, and you'll get a code that you can use to join. And we'll just use this to review some of the things that we talked about in December. And again, this is fairly brief. I think there's 9 questions on it. It's a fun way I've found in my life to review things rather than just sit and talk about it. So Emily's going to pull up the website. Again, I hope that most of you will join. Do it on your phone. It is put it in your URL, though. Here we go. We'll go classic. All right, let's do the classic mode. I think you click ready to join, and there's the pin. And you don't have to use your real name. You can use a fictitious name. I can't remember if in December if Rudolph or the Grinch won the contest. So we'll give a moment or two for those of you who want to participate. Oh, awesome. Could be an impersonator, though. Step over to the side. Blitzen, the Christmas theme. Okay, and for those of you who maybe are new to Kahoot, which is maybe some with us today, This game, there'll be questions. You'll get points for the correct answer, and you also get points for how quickly you respond. So it'll be differentiated. There will be a final winner on this, even if everybody gets them right. Okay, we're going to go 5 more seconds, and then we're going to begin. So anybody who's trying to join, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's start, Emily. 9 questions. This is, again, just review from last month. The February AD meeting is scheduled to begin at what time? This was important because it's a change from what we're typically used to. Awesome. 13 of you got that right. Okay, let's go to the next question. The reason for that is we are going to have the Center for Assessment will be on site, and the end of so our assessment directors meeting will still last for 2 hours, and those districts who want to receive some additional training on using local assessments to determine student growth, they'll be here to provide that for the last hour. And those of you who don't want to, you can leave or check out from the online participation at that time. Fonzie, oh, one of my favorite characters from my youth. Okay, let's go to the next. Questions about the apple should be directed to who? We'll have a couple questions on our organizational chart that we shared last month. Awesome, Jared Wright. That was still fairly confusing. Jared and Sydney have had diverse responsibilities, again, over the last 6 months for sure, so it's been confusing. It's one of the reasons we sent the updated organizational chart out last month, and then we'll kind of review that so that it's clear on who you're supposed to talk to about various things. Okay, let's go to our next one. See if Fonzie maintained the lead. Oh, Fonzie's off, 1649. All right, let's go on. Questions about accountability should be directed to who? This individual was referenced during Aaron's discussion. Okay, Anne Michelle, wonderful. 19 of you got that right. Let's go to the next. See where our leaderboard is. LA. Grinch is moving back up, and Fonzie's on the board again. Okay, let's go next. Questions about science items should be directed to who? This one might be harder. This individual's not in front of you guys a lot. Oh, and it was the easiest one. All right. Grinch has moved up. Okay, let's go next. The WIDA testing window closes on. It's a little more difficult maybe. It's open right now, I believe, and we're in the testing. March 9th. Okay, next. Okay, let's go on. The keep exit window is, so how long is the keep exit window? I gave this question a little longer for you to respond to before it timed out. Awesome. The majority of you got that right. Again, it's the last 4 weeks of your school year. Whenever that school year ends, you just backward design that, and that's your window for administering the keep. Okay, next. Can any of the keep be administered in a small group setting? This has been a question that we've talked again about in December, and some of you may still be wondering this. Can the majority of you got that right? There are 2 writing prompts that can be administered in small group. The rest of it will be individual. And then just a reminder, it's supposed to be a licensed educator who administers the KEEP test. Okay, next. Rudolph's opening a lead. We got another question, Emily. The ACT writing test will impact students' composite score on their ACT. Yes or no? Almost split 50-50. No, they'll get a separate score for their writing. It will not be factored into their composite score, which is important when we talk about accountability, because the accountability measure is the number of students who receive an 18 or higher on their composite score. So, okay, let's go on. And I think we're down to the end here. One more question maybe. The DLM will continue to be used as an alternate assessment during the 18-19 school year. There's been confusion from our office on this, and so I'll make sure that we're clear about this. Awesome. Majority of you do know that's true, that the DLM, we talked at one time, and it was actually included in our RFP, and we started including it in our contract for the 3-8 Computer Adaptive Statewide Assessment. And the decision was made late in the game that we'll pull that out, continue the DLM. We have a contract with them through 2020, and you'll see the State Board of Education go to a separate RFP for a statewide alternate assessment that would be applied in all the grade levels. Hopefully the vision of that, I think, is right, because it would be less problematic for our students to interact with multiple assessment systems potentially for the alternate. We can have one system, hopefully, for 3 through 11. Yes, yes, that's our hope. Including science was the question, and the answer was yes, that's our hope as we move forward. Those assessments, the alternative assessments, are very expensive, and so there is still a budgetary issue, or question anyway, on that, but our hope and goal is to have an alternative assessment statewide, same system, science and the other areas, 3 through 11. Okay. Podium, Rudolph won again. Wow. Okay, well, thank you. I've got just a couple of slides, and then I'm going to turn some time over to, is Tracy with us? I think she follows me up. Jared's going to do that in just a second. Okay. We'll get back to our PowerPoint slides. I'm going to just update you on some general things that are going on, things that you might have questions about, and then we'll get into the details of the things that impact you day to day. Okay, so our Questar contract, we are in the final stages. We've been going back and forth. Contract negotiation, as you guys know, can take quite a while as you try to anticipate things that could cause problems, or again, obviously we want to try to avoid amendments to contracts as much as possible. That should be before the board in February, which would be the final step of that. Implementation has already begun, and in fact, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this upcoming week, Questar will have a staff of people here at the State Board of Education. On Wednesday, they'll be meeting, and we'll have a staff of people from AIR. We're calling it the handoff meeting, and they'll spend the day together working on data elements that they need to be able to transfer, try to make this as smooth as possible. So just so you know, that's, I know we were a little behind schedule on getting that done, but it's moving forward at a pretty good pace. The 910 assessment RFP process is ongoing. We have vendors who've submitted their proposals or the responses to our RFP. The committee is reviewing those responses currently. On February 6th and 7th, the committee will be together, the scoring committee. They'll score those and a decision will be made. I'm optimistically saying that by the 7th of February, which will allow us to begin moving forward with implementing whatever that solution is. Obviously, their contract then will take a month or two to get put in place, but we'll begin implementation processes as soon as possible with that vendor. So when we meet next month, we should be able to tell you what the 910 College Readiness Assessment for the state of Utah will be the following year. Okay. APAC meeting. This is, I don't think we've had an APAC meeting for some time. Just wanted to update this group. This APAC meeting is an important part of our policy decisions that get made in accountability and assessment. And that group will be meeting on the 15th. Because we'll have the Center for Assessment on campus on that day for the assessment directors meeting and also for the training on growth indicators of local assessments, we will do the APAC meeting that afternoon. And it's fully staffed now and fully functioning, and that group will help guide us as we move forward. There's a new school report card. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. They've been working on it for about a year. At the Utah State School Boards Association meeting the first week of January, I was involved in a presentation to that group, and Michelle will review that with you today before this meeting's done. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail, but it's important for you to understand that's underway, and we expect this fall to have a new school report card that will be available, updated not just for our accountability changes, but also for usability's sake. And then again, accountability rules associated with ESSA, those are being updated, and they'll begin in the fall with the new report card. And you got a little bit of taste of some of that with Aaron earlier this morning. At the state board meeting, this actually started at the December board meeting. They were talking about making a change. At the first time I met with you guys in November, there was discussion, and I heard pretty clear voice from this group that one of your biggest challenges is the opt-out issues that you face in your schools. The data certainly supports that across the state, especially if you're in an online school. The opt-out rate in online schools is off the charts, and some of you have online schools in your LEAs as well. But even in traditional schools, our percentage of opt-out is getting above 5%. I think it's 6% statewide average, right? So the state board in committee, the Standards and Assessment Committee in December, drafted this proposed change to R277404-6. Now remember, opt-out and also the prohibition for using statewide assessment scores to calculate a student's grade, that's a statute. So our state board doesn't have, they have some limitations on how they can address some of those issues that our teachers are facing, right? But they put this language into play, and then the full board examined this in January, and this passed. So it's important for people to understand this allows, I don't know if flexibility is the right word, but you know, as we look down through this, it allows, it's kind of the opt-out of opt-out with some of the language that started with this, that we have a little bit of conflicting rules or statute, because you have this one that says parents have a lot of rights. You have this one that says teachers are prohibited from using data from statewide assessment systems. Well, what if a parent wants to allow them to use that data? Right? So that's a little bit of a conflict, and that's kind of the spirit that this was taken on, at least from my perception on the sidelines. Yes, Guy? Well, and you'll notice the word grade is completely left out of that. Yeah. So here's how I look at this. If I'm a teacher, because remember the decision of how a grade's calculated rests, it's one of those, sacred's too strong of a word, but this relationship between a teacher and a student. The teacher, part of their professional capability and judgment is to help determine a grade, right? And they do that through a disclosure statement, especially in the secondary setting. That disclosure statement's their contract that communicates with the parent of the child and the child the parameters of how the teacher's going to make a judgment about their level of proficiency on the course. And so what we're saying here, I don't know, it's hard. How I interpret this is that in my disclosure statement, I might have a list of requirements that a student needs to meet to demonstrate proficiency that they're going to get the associated credit with, right? And this allows, if I'm a teacher, I read this, it allows me to, if a parent supports it, to allow me to let a student replace, right, or fulfill one of the requirements in my disclosure statement with outcomes based on a statewide assessment system. We still have the rules that we cannot, a teacher cannot do this in a way that creates a disadvantage or a hardship on students who don't participate in assessment. But the way I see this is this was a pretty good move, I think. Obviously, it's not the big move that needs to happen, but I will tell you that there is a legislator who's been working and requesting lots of information from our office who's going to try to tackle the opt-out at the law level. And some of you may be contacted by this individual. I've directed him to the Utah Association of Assessment Directors to get feedback, because you're in positions you can advocate one way or another. Obviously, the state board employees, we advocate what the state board wants to have happen, and we can provide data. And So you may see some of that come your way in requests, and when you see that come out with the legislature, if you feel strongly about that, which this group does, then you'd want to advocate. If you think that solution that they propose is going to be positive for the outcomes of your students, then I would encourage you to get involved in that advocacy. So, is there a question? Oh, online. Let's do that one, and then we'll come to Hal. Oh, okay. I apologize. I don't know if Guy can remember what he said, but
I basically said that, reiterated your comment about not being allowed to let it influence a grade, but allowing it to essentially create credit. And obviously when it says that it's used to fulfill a requirement, then it's not saying that it can be used in lieu of a course itself, but in lieu of a requirement for the course.
yeah. So I'm not going to give any more interpretive value on this, but I will say it is something that the state board has done, an action they've taken that is designed to try to add value to the statewide assessment system for students and teachers, and we'll continue to work to show teachers how the statewide assessment system can be valuable to them in their instructional process. Okay, so the question was, this update is in effect as of right now. When you go on the state website, you wouldn't see that language because it takes them a little while to get that completely updated, but it was voted. You'll be able to see it in the minutes for the January board meeting. The full board approved that. If there's a law change, does it have to go back to the board for an update rule? I think if the law changes substantially, this provision, R277, has other places that there would need to be some updates too. Okay, Emily? So the question is, can a teacher put this in their disclosure statement at the beginning of the year to encourage participation? It really doesn't add any value unless a teacher communicates how they're going to use this, right? So yes, the answer that I would say is a teacher should, obviously under the direction of their school administrator, district leadership, identify their team of teachers that they work with, identify how this might change their practices with their grading, and in their disclosure statement is the key to that, especially in a secondary setting, because that's their contract with the student. Okay, so there's really two parts to that question. Number one is the question had to do with, will the ACT writing, I'll call it a sub-score. I don't know, Rebecca, if that's what ACT calls it, the sub-score in writing, or... Okay, so they don't call it a sub-score because that gets confusing with the other sub-scores that are part of the composite, but it's a standalone score. It will not impact, it's not factored into school accountability in any way. The second part of that question was, will the state report writing across the state? I don't know the answer to how it would be displayed on the, I'm guessing we're talking about the Data Gateway or other publications. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know, Rebecca, if you've had discussions that I haven't been involved in that talk about how it will be reported. If you know the answer to that, let's address it while we're on it, even though you're coming back to ACT.
So as of right now, we don't have a data gateway set up for ACT data. We're working on getting something like that set up. It's in the discussion process. The data that you get is on the CDs that come to you from ACT. So that will be for your districts to use to be able to look at. It can provide at a state level, we can look at the writing data as compared to other states that also test the same things, but it's not recorded in an accountability way. Eventually, when we have that information and can put it into a data gateway, then you'll be able to compare things from district to district or school to school if you would like to. But it's an informational piece of data. And Michelle, is there anything else you want to add to that? Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions related to this? We got more? Okay. That's a great question. Does USBE plan to issue some kind of a guidance document? I would like to do that. That won't be released right away. It has to go through a lot of eyes here, but we'd be happy to produce that and hopefully maybe have it ready by the February Assessment Directors meeting. Let's put that as an item that we hope to be able to present. Any other questions online? Okay. All right. Any other questions in this group? Awesome. Okay, Jared, if you want to come on up. Now, Hal kind of teased me a little bit earlier. My name wasn't on there to call for those questions, right? But I do want to make it clear that I hope that if there are any general questions, or even if you're not sure who to contact, you can contact me. You're my connection to the schools. I don't get out. It's one of the things I miss. I don't get out into the schools, which gives me lots of blind spots. And so input that I receive from assessment directors, I consider that to be very valuable, whether it's phone call or email, question, or just comments and directions or, ideas that you think I should consider. So never hesitate to call me. That's probably why I didn't put that on there. I was just generally there. So I know. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Tracy couldn't make it, so I'm going to just fill in for, actually, Rebecca and I will fill in for her. So we tend to do this every year, but if you have students that need Braille accommodations, you will contact Tracy Gooley. And that could be if you have, say you have an embosser that we've provided you and you don't have students that need it, if you could let us know so that we're trying to track down those embossers so that we can get them to the schools that do need them. Or if you have a student that needs an embosser and you don't have one, please contact us so that we can work with you to get that for your schools. The other thing I wanted to mention that will actually be, let's see if I can go ahead. Don't look. Yeah, ruin the surprise. So I wanted to bring this up while we were talking about Braille, but one of the changes that will be taking place for the spring will be the option to be able to, if you have a Braille student testing, they've had some switch as far as Nemeth code or UEB, and so a lot of students have switched over to learning UEB, and so now there's the option to be able to select which version you want for that student. So if they're still learning Nemeth, then you could switch it to Nemeth. If they're using UEB, you could switch it to UEB. So we've had the items, the test items, brailled and coded for each of these. If you don't know what these are and you have a Braille student, you probably should find out so that you can make sure that change is made. I just wanted to share that. So this will be in the TIDE system on the SAGE portal that you could make this change for the students that need it. And I'll go back. Actually, I'm going forward. Let me go back. Let's see. So any questions about that? So this is for SAGE or DLM assessments, if you let Tracy Gooley know as far as Braille. And I'm going to hand it over. Oh. Oh, yeah. In bold, just make sure you're not sending student names. You're just letting us know, hey, we have someone, we have a student that's needing Braille, and then we can contact you and work through it. We don't need to know specific student names. Okay, we're going to move to ACT Braille, which would be Tracy Gooley and also Rebecca Peterson.
So ACT recently, as in a couple of weeks ago, released a test form in 100% UEB, which is a new format for them. If you have any students who need to test using 100% UEB, and this is not an option that is available through TAA. So if you have students that would like to test using this option, you'll need to let Tracy or myself know, because you won't be able to go into TAA and make that request. And then we will need to work with ACT to get that set up for you. Also, with that, any students who are going to test using 100% UEB will need to do that testing on the March 20th testing date. They will not be able to do that on the regular February 27th test date. So on the information up here that we need your contact information so that we can get a hold of you and get that stuff ordered. And we need it no later. Our deadline to contact and arrange that with ACT is February 19th, but we would like to get the contact information from you by February 12th so that we have enough time to get those arrangements made. So any questions on ACT and of UEB? Anything online? Okay, I'll hand it over.
Okay, so now it's all things Sage. Yay! Okay. All right, here are the main things that you need to know. First of all, just a quick reminder that the Sage system is unavailable from March 9th through March 19th. And after March 9th, the interims are no longer available. And every year we get questions from teachers who say, can I have one more day to fit? No. You just have to tell them no. The Sage summative window opens on March 20th. And the benchmarks are available as soon as Sage Summative comes back up. The benchmarks are once again available from March 20th through June 18th for anybody who's still giving those. But it's very important that everyone understands the benchmarks expire after 10 days. So we have some teachers who think that they can give them, say, on March 8th, and then they're just going to let them ride and then come back on March 20th to take them, and those tests will have expired and the data is usually gone. Occasionally you can call, just tell them they have to be finished. They do a hard stop. So everything needs to be done by, and I would tell them March 8th so that if there's somebody who's crying, you have one more day to say, okay, I'll give you one more day and then you're a hero, okay? All right. Okay, a couple things. Don't forget, all of you have turned in your testing plans for your charters and your districts. But one other thing that you want to make sure is that your schools, if you are a district or you are a charter with campuses, that they have their school level testing plans organized. And this is just basic general information for you, like make sure that everybody has the right technology and who's going first and all of the things that are kind of really obvious to us, but sometimes aren't obvious to school principals, especially or the test administrators at your schools. So one of the big things you want to talk about is the testing and the system policy, as well as the ethics policy, which Jared will talk about in just a minute. And a really important thing is, are the students using the training test? For students with accommodations, it's imperative, if you've taken the time, which most of you have, to put in the accommodations that students need for their IEPs or 504s, it's important that students know what that looks like on the SAGE test. And it's important, the only place they can see that before the actual date of testing is through the training test. So it's really important that teachers use that. Even a bigger shout out is, now that there are cluster practice science tests, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's important that teachers who teach grades 6, 7, 8 science get on and have their students see what those cluster items are like. It's the only place they have access to what those new science items look like. At the new rookie AD training that we did, was that last week? I don't remember. I think it was last week. We had everybody log in and actually play with them, and I encourage you guys to do that, because you might hear some feedback from some people. They were quite impressed and a little overwhelmed. So remember that you're the adults with college educations, and we're giving it to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so make sure they understand the functionality as well as what they're going to be expected to do. That is live. It's live, not yet, because the interim pulls from the summative bank guy. So the reason why we don't have interim and benchmarks is this is the first year. And if you remember, when we first launched the summative test, remember we didn't have interim or benchmark tests for at least a year. We're in the same position with this grade 6, 7, 8 science. Good question. Yep. More items. Yes. The question is there a way for a science teacher to collect data from students taking the science and practice tests? And the answer to that's no. So, hey, Scott, you want to add? They can take and look at the score, but but there's no way to collect the data. Yeah. So when somebody says collect, that's why I interpreted it that way for you. Okay, expected testing times. This is pretty much the same thing as always. The big change this year, remember though, is that ELA writing, there is only one prompt. It is issued randomly within a class period. So teachers need to understand that students in their class will see either an informational explanatory prompt or an opinion argument prompt within the same class. So they are still teaching all of their standards. And the times have just been adjusted up there. And so remember, it's expected that most kids can finish their writing in 60 minutes and that everybody should be done in 90. Okay? Same exact kind of prompts. Nothing's changed other than they only have one instead of two, so it does shorten down testing time. So testing ethics, I'll let Mr. Ethics talk about this.
I'm not going to talk ethics policy, but I just wanted to mention, we did bring this up to the training for the SAGE, and the policy, if you don't know, is on the Assessment and Accountability website. It's on the main page. There's a tab that you click on that says Testing Ethics, I think is what it's called. So we have the policy that's been updated. It's 4 pages. We have the training. We have a PowerPoint that you can use with questions and things that, you know, it's up to you if you want to use that. We have the signature form. As far as the FAQ document, we've removed that because it matched the old ethics policy, and so we've taken that off to update. And so what I wanted to throw out to you is if you are, because we get a few ethics questions to us, if you are having certain questions asked of you over and over, we would love to hear those so that we could make sure those are on this document so it's beneficial to you. So if you have questions, if you could send those to me, Jared Wright, and I will be able to put those on the FAQ document so that will be helpful. Hopefully, also the previous document was primarily focused on SAGE. I'm trying to make this document a bit more broad in focusing on the different assessments we do, if there's specific questions related to those, including those in that. A reminder, if you have special education teachers that are going to be testing students and administering, make sure they're trained. This kind of goes back to what I talked about with Braille. A lot of those teachers who teach, you know, kind of come and go at the school. It might be tricky to get a hold of them, but it's really helpful for them to be able to know what's happening. And then the other thing with this, just a reminder that this is, if you've already trained your personnel on administering tests and using the ethics policy, you don't have to redo it this year. It's provided as kind of this is where we're moving for next year. Any questions? Yeah, Guy.
Policy. It would really be nice to be done a little bit earlier than that. I've tried to do my ethics training during our annual multi-teacher meeting, because that's when I can get everybody together. Unfortunately, in my little kind of district, 80% of the teachers go to that. Gathering together at another time is very easy to accomplish.
Right. So. Definitely. So Guy was just talking about they try and do the training in September, and it's really hard if they're trying to. Oh, right.
Here's the website saying it's going to be updated. Okay, then I won't worry about it until it's updated. And the update didn't show up for, what, 3 months?
At least. Maybe November, I think.
Available then, or was it December?
Right. Oh, approved November. Yeah, understood. So Guy is just commenting about the need to have this approved prior to August trainings and as schools coming into session. I think it relates to pretty much everyone because that's when they do it, and it's hard to try and track down after the fact. And keep, yeah. Right, right. Oh, understand. And part of that, you know, I could make excuses about the turnover and then also not understanding how long it really takes to get approval. But yeah, understood. We'll hit this, you know, in May or something like that to try and get that going. And really, we have it going. Really, it's just the FAQ document for this next year. So this is what we've got. So hopefully, we'll make sure that takes place. And I will, once I go sit down, I can send a link in the comments and you can find it that way. It's on the main assessment page with a tab that says testing ethics. In the spring, that is true. Okay. What's that? So let me have you repeat the question from there. Darren, you can correct me. I'll try it. Let me give it a shot. So for the spring administration, grades 9 and 10 won't have the option to take writing for SAGE. So during the, as Kim mentioned, during the March 9th to March 19th, AIR is making a change to the system for grades 9 and 10. And so they will, the only option for grades 9 and 10 students will be to take the ELA reading. They're playing with that, and there's some more, I guess there's some more detailed information as far as if students have taken writing now and how that's going to play out. And maybe we need to provide some more clarification on that. Do you want to? Darren will talk about this in.
Yeah, so just the context is what I want to talk about again, because this was an amendment to the AIR contract that cost $107,000. So somewhere in the past, and again, I don't have the historical view, the state board made the direction or the decision they're going to not administer writing to 9th and 10th graders. So the Assessment Accountability Office began moving with purchasing to amend the contract with AIR. The timeline of that was such that AIR could not accommodate that fully, meaning that schools that were had already begun administering the SAGE in 9th and 10th grade, and some of the schools in our state will administer writing at the end of first trimester, so as early as November, and or reading. They were not able to accommodate that timeline based on how late in the process this request was made. So the intent of the board was to not administer writing in 9th and 10th grade, and that amendment went through, was signed, and the board approved that at the January meeting. AIR accommodated that as best they could, and so they created the two testing windows, the fall and the spring. So what that allows is schools that administer writing in the fall window and then reading in the spring, or reading and writing in the fall window, those students still get a composite ELA score. But the intent of the board, again, was to remove writing. So those of you who have, and probably the majority of you are this way, don't administer any of the 9th, 10th grade SAGE ELA until the spring. They'll just take the reading only. Both sets of students will get a composite score, and there could be a lot of questions on this, and this probably isn't a place to try to address that. Both students will get a composite score that will be used in school accountability. So that's kind of the context of how we got to a place where it's a little confusing. Are kids taking the reading and writing or just the reading? The answer to that is it depends, which is everyone's favorite answer. So I don't know if that answers the question about that. Okay, I'm gonna let Jared back on this.
Do you want to share those? The way the system works is we've asked you and we have you submit those 11th graders through your SIS into UTREX. There's this big long system that we've shared in assessment directors meeting. So it doesn't work to have a couple here and there that you want to test. And you said there was another question. I'm not sure I understand that question. So the SAGE benchmarks are available from, as was said, March 20th to June 18th. Next year, we're going to be on a contract with Questar, and that discussion is in process. So as far as SAGE benchmarks, no, SAGE is, right, the contract's over, so we'll work with Questar. That's one of the items I know in the contract and in the discussion is having benchmark interim type assessments. So hopefully that will continue. I appreciate that feedback. Okay. So the comments here is right. So the comment is that the benchmarks are invaluable, as said by Jason and Guy also. Okay, so Darren is just saying that right now for the contract we have included benchmark and interim assessments. Now we're just finalizing the timeline for when those will be implemented. Yes, that's Guy's. That's Guy. Oh, definitely. Understood, Guy. Yeah, I wish we had more control over the quickly. Okay.
Person here. Guy's point that the RFP process is a lot of labor, a lot of work. You can lose continuity. I'll let this group know, our new purchasing directors, we've worked with this contract with Questar. It's written to go up to 10 years. We have, as the state board, has the authority to terminate that along the way at any point if we choose to, but it's written in a way, and they have a timeline. They're laying out a timeline that would be a 10-year process. So I can't tell you how exciting that was for me. The provision that allows us to keep that in place is we can terminate it after 5 years. We can terminate it at any point that we want to. The board can. But if we don't want to, if everything's going well and our stakeholders are satisfied, it could go on longer. Yeah. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to retire. Guy's the one bringing that up.
So the question is, if you administer ELA for the fall, and is that ELA reading, I'm assuming, and not writing? So I'll try and answer it from what I'm thinking about here. So if it's ELA and it's the reading portion, and it's the summative, they're not going to take it in the spring. AIR will work with that to be able to score that with a composite and proficiency level. Anything else? Okay. I will hand it over to Kim. I'm going to
Opting out of opt-out. Thanks, Jared. So Jared's opting out of opt-out. Just a quick reminder about parental, yes. Repeat the question. Through UTREX, yes. Yeah, through UTREX, yeah. But not, yeah. Does that answer the question? Yes, so it should be populating through UTREX if that's, Jared wants to add something?
So earlier this year, we asked you in your testing plan to be able to let us know if you wanted to test 11th graders and to which assessments you wanted to use. And then we worked with the system. So on our side, once you submit that to us through your student information system, we send it from UTREX into SAGE. So yeah, it goes to SAGE, but it's because you've already let us know that you would like to test your 11th graders. If you haven't let us know or you don't care, this is totally optional and it doesn't matter for you.
Okay, so parental exclusion, just a quick reminder, the opt-out forms, you can use the one that's posted on the State Assessment Accountability website, or you can create your own. The rule has specific things that need to be listed in it, so you just might want to review that just to make sure if you're sending out your own, you have it. And please don't forget that if it's, the 24-hour rule is a little vague about that. Remember, if a student turns in an opt-out form after they've already started the test, what do you do with it? What do you use? If students already started the test, what do you do if you get an opt-out form that morning? Or do you invalidate it? Okay, remember that. So we'll talk about special codes at another meeting. Another quick question, just to make sure that your technology is updated. We posted this in the slide just so you know what the SAGE system requirements are for the, and what the text manual is for online testing. There are some links provided in this website so that if you need to find them, if you need to send it to your IT people, especially if you're a newer AD and you're not sure who this is, one of the things we asked the ADs to do last week was to actually send, if they didn't know who it was, just email somebody they thought would know to find out who that person is who's in charge of UTREX and their test administrators, because we get a lot of questions and we say, well, that's supposed to be UTREX, and somebody goes, what is that? So we just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. The secure browser should already have been installed. Remember that the button looks like this in the portal, and that's going to tell you everything you need to know to make sure you've got the secure browser. For those of you who rent computers, we have a few charter schools who rent computers. Remember that this has to be uploaded before you can issue the test, because that's the only way it works. An effective, here's an update on, for those of you using Chrome OS 59, as of January 31st, it's not going to be compatible with SAGE anymore, and so you need to make sure that you upgrade your systems. AIR feels like they couldn't tell us exactly who's still on 59, but if anybody's on 59, please make sure you need to do that. Make sure your tech coordinators, make sure that your Chrome OS devices are updated to 60 or higher, or the test actually will not, you can't even use it. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. The couple of things that are new, some of you are aware of this, some of you aren't. We went through a little bit of this in the fall, but we want to make sure if there's anybody new, they know that there's an inbox added to every account in Tide so that you can share secure information without having to email it. And that little inbox is, you'll see it right on the in the banner as you log into Tide. There's a little inbox that allows you to share information. The Braille option, this is the same thing that Jared just went over. Remember that little drop-down menu. It's really important that you find out if students are trained in UEB versus Nemeth, because the system defaults to Nemeth, but they are giving us a UEB option as well, so that the students can be successful. Yep. The paper pencil test, that's part of an IEP, and they have to have that print on request. That would be part of an IEP. But as far as giving it to anybody online, it has to be, it's part of an IEP decision that has to be made. And that print on request is an advanced thing. It's not something they just give to anybody. Okay? This is a quick mention about ELA administration, and this is just a quick slide. And Michelle's going to go into this more in depth. We just want you to be aware of the fact that everybody takes all sections of the SAGE now, including ELA students, EL students who are here in their first year unless they enroll after April 15th, 2018. And she'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Anything you want to add about that? And there are special codes, just so Anne Michelle just added that there are special codes for each of these situations, and we'll talk about that more when we go into special codes. Yes, this has been given to ALS directors. That was a question. So they're already aware. Real quick changes. This is the operational field test year for science grades 6, 7, and 8. There are practice clusters on the training site, which I already mentioned before. Please, please, please let your teachers know about this, and you may even want to go in and play with them a little bit so you see what that is. Another important thing, there will be no immediate scores for science grades 6, 7, and 8 because they have to go through the whole process. The summative writing tests only include one prompt for grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 11 for those teachers who are taking it. The summative grade 9 and 10 tests do not require writing to get a proficiency. And like we already talked about, it's going to be combined if you did it earlier, like for CASH and some of our districts on trimesters. Science practice clusters, if you want to see where they are, you log into the training test and they're right there. And the test list will now show the practice and you can select the grades and go in and play with the cluster. The scoring assertions, so it shows what they look like, are also in there, and so that you can see it, but you have to click on the score item so that they can see that. And this is a new thing, part of the practice and training test, a good thing for every person who's giving a science test, grade 6, 7, 8, make sure they go in and make sure the kids play with this. This is a really important feature. When Jared and I and Tracy went out and did our SAGE observations last year, we asked some of the, especially at secondary level, how many kids had done anything with the training or a test, and the majority of our secondary students said, oh, we did that in elementary school. And the problem is if you know, we add a new item type, we've added new item types every year, there's a whole bunch of this. The assumption that somebody else is doing this is really not a really good practice. Even if a teacher just puts it up on their projector and shows it quickly in the class to say, here's a new item type you may not be familiar of, the kids just do better with it once they've had a little bit of practice. And it doesn't have to take a whole class period, it's just a matter of making sure that the students are successful because they understand the functionality versus they don't understand the content. Did you want to say something, Darren?
This comment's related to the new science items. We just completed our parent review process at the state capitol last week. And they review all items that are new to the assessment system, but obviously this year a bulk of their time was spent on science. Some of the feedback that we received as we talked to those parents at the end was the way the science item clusters are, the smaller the screen that they're testing on, the more challenging it is, the way they're laid out. Now, probably you don't have a lot of control over what screen size the students are going to be interacting with for science, but if you do, if you're in a setting where you're making a decision whether they're going to have a hardwired lab with a big monitor versus a Chromebook versus an iPad, I think there's still some LEAs that use iPads to administer the test. If you have the ability to make a choice on that, based on the feedback we got from the parents that went through every item, the bigger the screen, the easier it is for them to work through the cluster questions. So, yes, yeah. So just feedback we got from parents who've seen all the items. So.
And it's only 6 through 8 because that's the only ones that are going to the new standards so far. Okay, another quick reminder about condition codes. We are still getting lots of questions from teachers every now and then. They email us like, I gave an interim test and why did this show up? It's really important that teachers understand the change in the writing scoring this year, okay? And that is that the condition codes are going to apply, and we're going to create a little one-pager and send it out to you guys so that you can just forward it on and let them know. But this is what we've been messaging in all of our writing trainings and everything else, and we've had a huge response of teachers giving an informational writing benchmark, and we've had a lot of comments from teachers how surprised they were at which kids are actually hitting prompt copy match, including the fact that some of it's the kids they considered their best writers because they can copy really well. And it's really difficult, by the way, for teachers to find that. All right, computers are good at this. This is really hard if you aren't the writer to find where you've actually direct copied too much information from textual evidence into writing. We tried it in the summer at rural schools, and the teachers who were there were surprised how hard that really is and how time consuming it is. But prompt copy match, one of the things you want to remember is if an essay hits prompt copy match or duplicate text, they will all be sent for hand scoring for verification, which basically means if a teacher contacts you and says, my student scored and it didn't show up, it's gone for hand scoring for verification. It takes up to 5 working days for that score to show up. Okay, and so that's really important that they understand what that looks like. Remember that with only one prompt, the prompt that the student didn't receive will say too many items, too few items attempted. That doesn't mean the student didn't answer the question. It means they didn't get that prompt, and the other one should show a score or a condition code. If a student doesn't write enough on the prompt they received, the condition code will show not enough data. So what you need to make sure they understand is they need to actually look at the individual student report and see what the condition code was that it went. We've asked for them to give us some kind of verification, for AIR to tell us when we know something went to hand scoring. It's still kind of in the process. We also ask that the too few items attempted not show up as blank, but it's just it's just not going to happen this year. So just so you're aware, that's what it looks like. And this is just what duplicate text looks like. And then this is what it looks like if they get not enough data. The not enough data means they didn't answer enough. That is not going for hand scoring. Obviously, it didn't answer. And then one other thing that you need to remember, just that the writing test is only going to include one prompt, and then about how the writing and reading is going to be scored for grades 9, 10. Verification, just so you know, like I said, all of the responses that hit a condition code for prompt copy match or duplicate text will be sent for hand scoring, which means there's no instant score on those tests. And so it's going to take up to 5 days. And I'm repeating it because I can guarantee I'm going to send about 75,000 emails that say the same thing over and over. So I'm just doing it. I'm practicing. The percentage of writing responses, there also will be some of those that will also be sent for hand scoring, just like last year, for basically when there's the scoring algorithm has low confidence. It's like we're not really sure. It's kind of a 3. It might be a 4. And that really just works in the favor when the scoring algorithm says, ooh, let's look at this one more time. We want to have some human eyes. They go for that as well, and that also will hit the 5-day verification. Okay, so remember that sometimes it won't show a score, and anything that has, it's not going to show up. Yeah, great. All I heard from AIR was a percentage. Is it still going to be about 20%, give or take? It's about 20% total. Okay, so. But we're guessing that a majority of these are going to be the prompt copy match duplicate text. Overall, prompt copy match essays last year before we started rescoring, it was almost, I don't know, Heather, what was it, 5? We looked at it afterwards. It's almost like for everyone that went prompt copy match, we only had like a quarter. I mean, it's double the amount going for prompt copy match that ever go for duplicate text. It was like 2% of all the responses total are duplicate text, and that's when the students creatively type the same thing over and over and over. One of the ones I looked at, a student wrote a great paragraph and proceeded to copy and paste it over and over and over for 5 solid pages, just so you know. So, and looking at that, and we're not even sure they copy and pasted it. We were wondering if the student was just diligently sitting there just retyping it, so he looked busy. So that's one of the things that really happened. And in, just so you know, the SAGE benchmarks are also showing the condition codes, which is why we've begged everybody to give a writing test so that they're familiar with it. And that's one of the things that we've asked to do as well. Another thing that's available in benchmarks is longitudinal reporting for kids who've actually taken benchmarks before. It'll start to show how they're getting better. You can manage test reasons. A lot of people have already done this. I mean, some of this is a little redundant. But for one thing that's really nice for SAGE benchmarks is you can go in and say this is a pre-assessment versus a post-assessment. And some teachers are using these, by the way, for their teacher evaluations, for their documentation. And so they've actually put in reasons so that they can show same version, same whichever they're doing. The benchmark rubrics look exactly the same. The only difference is the order's a little bit reversed. So the same thing will be again. There's not enough data. It'll show a condition code if there was one. The student didn't type enough. Duplicate text. Prompt copy match. An important thing, and this is a question that we've had a little bit of, what surprised the teachers is that they don't get any points. They think that they hit the condition code and they're like, well, why would they get no score? Because they wrote something. Well, they did, but they didn't actually write their own, it wasn't in their own words, let's put it that way. And to help this, we have been going out on the tour, and part 2 starts next week. And we're going to go out and do writing workshops again. Just so you know, because of the whole Midas, when Midas came up, every teacher, and we've had a lot of questions about this too, and some of you can help with this, every teacher who attended, or instructional coach, or anybody from your district or school who came, everybody who attends session 1, Emily went in diligently and registered them all in the second session in Midas for session 2. And so they're all registered. Before Christmas, she sent out a reminder to every single person saying that you're already registered. We've had a few people ask, do I have to go to the same session? We've just told them, please contact Emily. Some of them have emailed me or Megan or Heather, but they just email us, and she's working with them on that. But pretty much we've asked everybody who went to stay at the same location unless it's a big deal. We had some teachers who actually drove from Tooele all the way to Vernal to come to the writing workshop, which that was massively impressive, by the way, just so you know. Okay. If you have any questions about registration or you're not sure, please make sure, Midas kind of has been a little bit of a issue. Some teachers aren't even aware what Midas is or what the emails look like. And so some things have gone to junk mail, and some people aren't sure. You might want to just send a quick reminder out about that. And these are the dates. They're so in case you're wondering when they are. We're repeating a first session in Uinta School District on the 24th. That's not up here because it's only basically for Uinta School District. But these are the dates when where we'll be. If you'll notice, the second week of February, basically, Megan, me, Heather, Whitney, and Tracy will not be in the office because we will be actually out on the road. 1,150 miles in 1 week. Woohoo! We can't wait. And Heather has something to add that her slides didn't get in about another training that you guys need to know about. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Sure. The kids who took it already, they had to take writing. Anybody who took the test in the fall, like from September until, December, those kids had to take writing. And it's going to be in their composite score. Okay, so anybody who took it before, which is the case with trimester, anybody who takes it, like even if you take it, if they do it in the next month, it'll still show up as a composite score. It's after March 9th that this officially goes in. Is that still true, or did that change, Darren? Right. They just don't have to. Right? Reading in the fall. Right. Right. Okay, so if they completed reading, you still have to complete the reading part in order to get your ELA score, no matter what. That's, I think, the simplest way to do that. Okay. For second try. Right. Right. The question is for students on second trimester, we have teachers who are just going to take reading in the second trimester window, which is before March 9th. Those students will only they'll only take the reading. They won't have their instant score until after the system changes, after March 9th, which is why one of the reasons why the system's down for 2 weeks. And then they'll see their composite score. So there won't be instant scoring for ELA, for grades 9, 10, for in the second trimester. They only have to take reading. They don't have to take writing. And I know. There's never been an immediate score for trimester scores anyway, but okay. Did that help? Okay.
Okay, everything that I am presenting was sent in the AD memo last week. We've talked to Amy and she's adding these slides. So when you receive the slides, it will include this information again. It's just about the DIBELS reporting trainings for middle of the year. So at the beginning of the year, we had various trainings across the state on how to utilize DIBELS reports. Now that we're in the middle of the year, it's helping instructional coaches, building leaders, district leaders, charter school leaders, and teachers know how to utilize the reports in the middle of the year. So one difference from the beginning of the year to now is that at beginning of the year, we had coaches only attend the teacher session. At this point, we're encouraging the coaches to attend both as the bridge between data big school picture to classroom picture. So they are being encouraged at this time to register for both that they choose to attend. So there are 2 flyers that you'll receive in one communication, or you have received in the AD memo last week. One speaks to the school and district leader training, and the other speaks to the teacher and coach, remembering also that the coach is to attend both. So mainly what the school and district leader training is speaking to is helping building leaders be able to actually take their data and input it into a PowerPoint that they could then present to their faculty, and helping them build their capacity as an instructional leader in their building in that regard, and sort of building a plan on how to move forward. That's what they will be doing with their time. On the flyer, you will see at the bottom, if you are, once you get it, what the format of that PowerPoint sort of looks like and what the template they'll be working off of looks like for that training. For teachers, it's more how to build small groups around your data, finding students with similar holes, what holes do you start with first, and working in that way. It's more of a working session with workshops that teachers will be able to choose based on where they feel they are individually with their skill set to build their capacity as a teacher in that regard as well, helping students at a more tier 2 level in some ways. So that is the DIBELS reporting. On the documents you will receive, there is a table with the times and the locations, and at the bottom there is the registration link. And Brecken Riley through Amplify is doing those. So her contact information and mine will also be included. Note that if you are a DMG user, Amplify's data is automatically uploaded, but with DMG, once the window closes, they still have time to put in their data afterward. For building leaders and teachers to be prepared for these trainings, you will need to have your data in so that your reports will be able to be printed and you'll be able to utilize your data in the system. So if you are a DMG user, you will need to make sure that data is input before you attend the training. Last, KEEP. Tomorrow, a portion of the KEEP team is going out to field test in certain schools with kindergartners to see how long the KEEP actually will take to give, the KEEP exit. So we will have more information regarding that as time goes on. Davis actually went out and did some of their own field testing, and we have appreciated their feedback. If you have other feedback you'd like to share, we're continuing to look through that and tweak it as needed. every time the KEEP team meets. So please get that to me also, and know that we'll have more information coming regarding how long we estimate that test will take based on what we see out in the field. Thank you, and I am done.
Okay, we're going to do ACT in 5 minutes or less. So here we go, which means that sadly we're not going to play our game. And it was 60s and 70s music this time. Dang it. So we'll save it. Don't worry, it will still be around. Okay, so 5 minutes or less. Here we go. Important dates. Everybody should be finished with step 3 on ACT website. You should be moving on to steps 4 and 5. Those need to be completed because the test is coming up next month. That's fast. The big deadlines to be aware of, January 26th, this is before our next AD meeting. If you have any students that have accommodations that need to have additional information submitted, any of those things that were denied that maybe needed additional information, those things need to be resubmitted by January 26th. That's the deadline. Also, you need to have your trainings and things completed. There's not a deadline for that, but I would suggest doing that in enough time that if there are questions, you can make sure to address those questions prior to ACT test day. We already talked about this, so I'm going to skip this. Getting ready to administer. This is where you need to think about, since writing is new this year, if you are administering the paper test, how many of your students have actually written an essay for 40 minutes by hand lately? If you are administering the paper ACT, they are going to be writing the written part of the essay. So you can download prompts and have your students do a practice writing session on paper by hand for 40 minutes. And then you can type in that information into Utah Compose, and then it will provide feedback so that you don't have to have everybody going through and scoring essays by hand, unless they want to. So here's some instructions that will come to you on the slides for how you can do that. The supplemental instructions that we talked about relating to the FERPA rules are posted on the website right now, and they will be emailed to testing coordinators so that you can share those. Also, the directions for how to complete the non-test portions of the pre-test section are available as well. There were questions about that at our previous training for how to complete the non-test portions online. There are some detailed instructions for how to do that. Upcoming trainings, there's one today. So today, after this meeting, if you want to stay around in the 57-degree weather, hang out in Basement West, at 12:30 in here, ACT will be coming to do their training. This is the more technical administration part of the training. So hang out. If you are interested in that training, it will also be on WebEx. So if you want to log in via WebEx, the link is on there. Yeah. Yes, yeah. And we'll also send out the link for that. Additional training is on February 9th. This is the Q&A where you can log in and you can ask questions. This is also focused on test administration. Additionally, if you were not able to attend the training that we did, the smooth sailing training where we were talking about creating your checklist and what do you need to be aware of, we did record that. And if you'd like a copy of that recording, as well as the workbook that we used, you can email me and I can send that to you. So that was less than 5 minutes. How's your brain? Okay, any questions before we move on? Okay, anything online? Yep, okay, thank you. Here's Anne Michelle.
Hey, and now I get to do 10 minutes, I think. So
Darren has asked me to summarize for you what was presented by Darren and Assistant Superintendent Patty Norman at the Utah School Board Association conference that's attended by school board members and also many superintendents. So this is information that was shared with perhaps your leadership, and you can use this to have dialogue and conversations from that platform that this is what was shared at USBA, and to inform them and get them on board with the accountability system and school grades. The focus was to update them on the new school grade reports, which I'll show you. Here's a nice snapshot of our previous school grade report. This is what we've had. You know, as we know, the previous report was based on student proficiency, student growth. Here's an MGP chart. Here's college readiness. We're not really sure how these things connect into an overall grade. So we went through a design process to redesign the way that these school grade reports present, what information is there, what gets prime real estate. That was done with some pretty intensive 2 to 3 hour focus groups with 55 educators, getting their feedback on what's important to them. Some themes from those focus groups was things need to be clear and concise. That information needs to be clear. Schools want to demonstrate the other kinds of programs they have, such as extracurricular activities on their school grade report. Comparisons between school and district versus school and state were mentioned. Opt-out rates and participation was a big talking point there. So here's some summary of what came out of those focus groups that guided our design decisions. Just a review of the accountability system. This is something new that I didn't understand before, but the top row of this timeline is our state, and the bottom row is federal. So our state enacted accountability reporting requirements in 1990, far before the federal government did. So the state of Utah has prioritized reporting and accountability much longer than there have been federal requirements, which I think is interesting. You've seen this before. The previous system was largely based on the one administration of one test. Schools are held accountable for growth and proficiency. For secondary, you add in the graduation, ACT, and right here a whole bunch of mysterious magic happens, and then there's a letter grade, and it has implications for your public, for your teachers, for the parents that attend your school. We reviewed the accountability system moving forward, what that's going to look like, the new indicators that are included there, as we've talked about a lot. I do want to just point out that what Aaron was talking about this morning about student growth targets, that is how growth will be calculated. First the SGP, then we project a trajectory 3 years out for what the student should need to earn in each of the 3 years to reach that target, and we look at did they meet their first year student growth target. That's how growth is calculated. The SGP of 40 or higher is used in growth at the lowest quartile. We mentioned the point that we've talked about, no more moving targets, that we've set cut score thresholds or percentage thresholds for school grades. So those things won't change. It's not going to be quite as mysterious as it has been in the past. We talked about the performance descriptors that are attached to each of these school grades to help change perception of what school letter grade means. And the design thinking approach. Go ahead. That is a really complex question. Can I address that at another time due to time? The question is about how are opt-outs relevant, and the conversation in the focus groups was that the opt-out rate does impact the reliability of the system, and so it's important to report and be transparent about the opt-out rate on the report card, so that you know how much weight perhaps to give to the overall school grade. There are more details than that, but that's a summary of the conversation. We used a design thinking approach to identify our primary users should be parents, because if we have a parent mindset in designing the report card, then the report card should be accessible to anyone, people outside of education, as well as our teachers and principals, et cetera. So in that design thinking of how this was put together, we kept parents as our primary user. This is the prototype phase, where what we have developed thus far is a blueprint. Just like you design a house, you design the outline, the blueprint, the specs before you put pretty colors on it, and hammer out all the details of what kind of carpet, et cetera, it's going to have. So I have for you on the back table 3 views of what the school report card design will look like. And we asked schools, superintendents, and board members to this question to really direct their thinking. How can a school report card, as we gave them these examples, how can this inform your decisions? How can this be a tool for you rather than a point of frustration or an annoyance? And we came up with some really great productive answers. I think this is a key point to shifting people's mindset about how this can be used as a tool to make decisions about funding and programs and how we support students. This is new. We've talked a lot about the self-reported indicators, that the board will approve a list of self-reported indicators that schools can upload themselves. I have for you 2 documents. The first one is an update of this, which you've seen before, but it's been updated to reflect the changes that have happened with ACT and 9th and 10th grade assessment. This is a really helpful infographic for sharing with your people. The second page has the cut score thresholds that I've shared with you in AD webinars, but this is another kind of graphic piece that you can use to communicate what those cut scores are. On the back is the very first beginning conversation of what those self-reported indicators should look like. They go through what domain of influence are you focusing on, what implementation activities are taking place, and what measures of effectiveness for those activities could be reported and uploaded. We're going to spend some more time on this at our next AD meeting. I really would like your feedback before we take this list to the board about what this should include. I sort of framed it around John Hattie's visible learning and those different domains of, or types of, what does he call them? You know what I mean. There's school level factors, there's student level factors, teacher factors, instructional factors, and that's kind of the framework that I used to identify some evidence-based practices that have outcome measures. And those outcome measures of effectiveness are what will go to the report card. And I really would like you to spend some time looking at this, and we'll collect some feedback. I might prompt you in AD memos between now and then to either send me feedback or be prepared to have a discussion when we meet again. Again, these are on the back table, but I also have copies right here in front of me. Are there any questions? Yep. I have sent digital copies to you, and so you'll get copies of these forms as well. I think that's all. Oh, here's a better visual of how these are the school level factors, the example implementation activity, and then the outcome or fidelity or process measure that can go on the report card. And I think that's all. Closing remarks.
I do want to highlight something that is a change on the accountability, and I'm referencing right now the performance thresholds for school grades. This is a big deal, and it's a big deal in a positive direction. In the past, there were thresholds set for schools. A certain number of schools in the state had to receive Fs, and a certain number had to receive Ds and Bs and As. Beginning this fall, that's no longer the case, and that description there on changing to an absolute grading system describes that a little bit. And so it's possible in our state that we could get to a point where none of our schools receive failing marks, that they all move up because it's basing it on criteria rather than on a norm referenced approach. So that's a big deal in a positive direction. We don't always get to promote things that are moving in a positive direction. I hope that you'll keep that in mind as you talk to your stakeholders. So again, I want to thank you for the good work that you do in the schools, the importance you place on accuracy in our student accountability system, having all of your eyes on it to make sure that we, again, have accurate data and use the data appropriately, and that we communicate that to the policymakers that influence a lot of decisions is important. So you do great work, and thank you, and we'll see you at a future time.